Councillor, why don't we start, and then if others
Okay.
join, and then we can go through
Yes,
the agenda. So
sure.
um, I want to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting with Councillor Lai for community associations and representatives. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be with us. My name's Jim Murphy. I'm the executive assistant to Councillor Lai, and I'll be acting as the MC for this evening. We have 90 minutes. We've scheduled the meeting till 8 o'clock, and we want to update you on a number of important issues, current issues, multi-tenanted housing, transportation issues, local developments, and of course, COVID. And we have some city staff that'll be joining us for those items, and the council will introduce them also when those items come up. So I'm just going to kind of keep us on track. It's not a lot time, but it's important that we hear from you and any questions that you have and views. It's really about that. And Councillor Lai wanted to provide this opportunity for you to both receive information, but also to provide input. So I'm one final item just before passing it over to Councillor Lai for some introductory comments, just in terms of the logistics, and we've been talking about that as we've been welcoming people, is if you're not speaking, if you're not asking a question or commenting, if you can just press mute, it helps us on the technology side of things. And that's at the bottom of your screen if you're on your laptop or your desktop. And then obviously unmute when you do want to speak. And if there's any other technical issues, we have staff, and I believe we provided a phone number for you to call if there's any sort of technical glitches along the way. So with that sort of high-level introduction, I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Lai, the Councillor for Ward 23, Scarborough North.
Well, thank you, Jim, and welcome all. I'm glad that we have found some time to get together. There's a lot of happening at the city and in the ward, and I just wanted to update you, but also receive feedback from you. So tonight we will touch on some important issues such as rooming house, developments in the ward, transportation, traffic calming measures, and of course, COVID-19. I want to acknowledge an important role you all play. Community associations are the backbone of local neighborhoods. You make us aware of the key issues that enable a livable community. And you are all volunteers. You give all of your time for the greater good. I must say I'm more than lucky and proud to have committee partners like you. While we have some city staff presentations, I really do want to listen and to listen to your thoughts, your ideas, and your suggestions. Thank you to the city staff who are here tonight and made time for us tonight. Before passing it back to Jim to begin discussing the first item, I wanted to introduce my team members joining us tonight. Well, Jim Murphy, as you know, that he's introduced himself. He's my EA. And many of you may know Viviana Gallo. So where's Vivian? Vivian, I don't know whether, can everybody see? Just do a little wave, Vivian.
Hello, yes.
Yes. And she's my senior constituency assistant, along with Vicky and Kian, who both work in my community office. Hello, Vicky and Kian. Can you just maybe say a little hello here? There's everyone. Kian and Vicky as well. So I just, I will pass it back over to Jim to start with the first item.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have 4 items tonight, and then there's also other business at the end. And Councillor Lai wanted to talk about a couple of items at the end. And I know we started a little later, but this is an important item. We don't have a staff person for this one. This is the only item we don't have a staff person. But at council this week, which begins tomorrow, Councillor Lai will be at council tomorrow. There is the report on rooming houses or multi-tenanted housing, which is proposing a citywide bylaw to allow rooming houses across the city. As you know, they are currently illegal in the former city of Scarborough and in other municipalities at Etobicoke and North York. The city is proposing to have a bylaw that would allow them, and in stable residential areas, low-rise residential areas, to allow for up to 6 units within a single-family home or semi-detached home, and those are unrelated people living together. City staff and the staff report argues that legalizing them will make it easier to regulate. They also suggest that there's the opportunity for more affordable housing. Others, and Councillor Lai will be speaking about this, who hosted a town hall. We've heard from many residents in Scarborough North on this. Not all of them are with us tonight, but the councillor had a meeting yesterday with several also, are against and suggest that stable residential areas are at risk. They're not terribly comfortable with the ability of the city to enforce the rules because they don't enforce them now. And of course, the issue of parking also always comes up when it's related to a rooming house or multi-tenant housing. The city is proposing a fee that would be applied to these rooming houses of $25 a room. And they're also proposing an annual $150 inspection fee on top of that. So that's sort of the city proposal. It's a very long proposal. I know many of you have been involved in it. I know Stephen Castleman and others. And as I say, the councillors talked to other members of the community on it. It's one of those issues that's resulted in a lot of emails to our office. I'll stop there, and I'm just going to ask Councillor Lai to provide some comments, and then we'll just open it up for any comments from those that are on the.
Well, thank you, Jim. And again, this is a very difficult issue, rooming house and multi-tenant housing. And it's been around since amalgamation in 1998, and there's no decision being made. And they really wanted to do something, but this is the time. And on the one hand, I've lived in a rooming house once myself. When I first came to Canada, I lived in a rooming house downtown, and I do have an open mind to provide additional affordable housing options. And I certainly believe we need to have a better enforcement structure for rooming houses. On the other hand, I think residents have concerns. The ones that stand out are number of rooms. I think they believe 6 is too many in the suburban area. Non-owner occupied rooming houses, parking, garbage, and lawn maintenance. There's no right to object rooming houses application on your street. These are some of the comments that I actually, when I hosted my town hall, that people are writing me about. Also, there's no maximum number of multi-tenanted housing in the ward, etc. Not to mention that residents do not trust the MLS, the Municipal Licensing and Standards Group, to enforce the rules. And residents also worry about their property value, the change in character of the neighborhood, and the future of stable residential areas. And I do get them all. And as I mentioned, I held a town hall back in May with over 75 people in attendance. Some of you were there, and the vast majority were opposed to the city's proposed framework. And I want you to know that I could not support the framework in its current form, and as it does not solve the root problem. We've been, the mayor and some of the councillors has been trying to see whether we can do amendments to make it better, but I would support more on a deferral, just to give it back to staff. And I had a discussion with the mayor earlier today, and I think a couple of the councillors from Scarborough and North York, we believe that they should be all the Planning and Housing Committee consists of only downtown Toronto councillors. There's no representation of Etobicoke, there's no representation for North York, and there's no representation in Scarborough. So I've told the mayor, perhaps if we're going to give it back to staff, I mean, it's just like procrastination. I mean, how better can we do? That the mayor suggests maybe we could get some of the councillors from different parts of the city to form a group and see, to provide input that reflects the the intent, and that reflects the wishes of the residents in the area, in the suburban area. So this is going to be on council. The vote is on this week, and I think it will be awfully close, for and against. I think I've calculated well. Councillor Min Wong and I were calculating the votes. I think we're very close. We are 13. It's just 26 votes on council. I think we've counted is about maybe 14 to 20 opposed, or 13 to 13. A couple of them we don't know how they're going to vote, but after debate, anybody can vote differently. But I think it's going to be a very, very close vote. And having said all that, I will open up for comments and questions. And Jim, could you please coordinate?
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that comment. And I have spoken to some of you about this item and to others that not with us tonight. But as I talked about at the beginning, in terms of logistics, if you unmuted yourself, you can speak. And if more than one person speaking, I'll just call out a name. So if there's anybody that would like to speak, please go ahead. And if there's any questions or you just want to make a comment on this issue and provide some input.
Jim, before we begin, maybe we should probably quickly introduce who's among us now. I think Allura is representing the Rosewood Community Association, and Stephen Castleman and Sheila White, and you're both representing the Friends of the City Farquharson, right? And Courtney is a Rosewood, right? Courtney belongs to the Rosewood Community Association as well. So there are two communities, and we have a Christina Carrera here. So Christina, could you please maybe quickly introduce yourself? And you are with the which group are you with? The Shootfield group, are you?
Correct.
Good. So we thank you, welcome, and we are welcome, and then the Shootfield group is here. So we have through community association group here, the community-led group here, and we are now opening the floor to questions on rooming houses and multi-tenant housing.
So go ahead, Stephen.
Stephen, please unmute yourself.
Have you determined who's on the phone?
Well, I
so.
know we should. Can the person who's on the phone with a phone number ending by 36, could you please press *6 to unmute yourself so that we can record who you are? No response?
They're listening, but they're on mute. So hopefully they'll get to.
There may be technical difficulties.
Sorry, Stephen, did you want to say something, or were you just asking about that?
Well, I was asking about that, but I also have some comments to make. I am from the outset in favor of legislation to improve the present situation. But I also can appreciate that the topics that you mentioned, Cynthia, are serious problems that the people who are saying no to you have those in their mind. For example, just as a simple one, it's the parking on the street. I think that can be solved, because if you issue a permit for a rooming house, you at the same time can say you are allowed to have tenants up to 2 cars, because you'll know how much space there is in the driveway. And if someone comes along after that with a 3rd car and they only have a license for 2, then they can't be allowed into the rooming house. So I think that can be solved, that part of the problem. I also think that the large number, like they were talking 24 people, that's scary. That's not a rooming house. That's a little hotel. So what the city is developing is a business to allow someone to own 4 rooming houses, 24 people per house, and it's now a big business. And that was not what I thought rooming houses were about, to be honest with you. I thought, you know, somebody needed to make some extra money to pay off a mortgage, and in today's day and world, they'll need 4 people to help pay off a mortgage, but not 24 people. And so if someone says to me 24 people, I'm not going to approve that. That's
When,
absolutely.
where did you read 24
They
people,
were
Stephen?
talking 24 people in.
I think it's only a limit of 6 people.
Well, that's
Certainly
what I
is.
was hoping, but
I think it's
Certain
6
areas.
rooms, but what's the
6.
limit of
Yes.
person per room?
Oh, that's true. That's true.
6
6
rooms,
rooms.
24 people.
No, 6 room, I think, well, I think this is one of the points that we need to actually make sure that, you know, the definition, you know, we wanted to make sure that they are like, you know, how many rooms, how many people per room, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think there's a limit on that, and that's a good point, Stephen, which is in the stable residential areas like Scarborough North, it'll be 6. Downtown, they'll allow 12 and 24. But within one of those units, you could have 2. So you're right, it could be double, it could be 12. You could be absolutely right.
There's another part of this, and everybody who has expressed the opinion that they didn't want rooming houses has said, and you are not having the owner or a representative of the owner in living in the rooming house.
We call them
And
owner occupied. Yeah.
that's right, and I can understand that. If the owner isn't there, then the garbage isn't looked after, then the cars aren't looked after, and that's a problem. And so, you know, do I vote for rooming houses with the owner not present? I don't think so, you know.
That's what I mentioned, that, you know, in its current form, I can't support it. But like I said, if they can address all these issues, and like you said, if there's a way to solve some of those issues, and, you know, because I've actually sent them a letter, the city, copying the mayor, copying the chair of the housing committee, about what we've discussed, and none of those comments or recommendations or suggestions are being taken,
Yeah.
because I don't think it's right. You know, we mentioned some of these things in my letter to them, and you know, and they said there's a human rights lens at the committee. I actually attended committee. They said that there was a human rights lens to, you know, to the right to home, you know, a right to affordable housing and all that kind of thing. And I asked a question at the committee of staff, and in which they beat around the bush. They didn't answer my question. I said, what about the human rights of the neighbor homeowner? We should be listening to those people as well. So I think, you know, I will be speaking the same kind of argument on council, and hopefully we'll get fine tuned it, and, you know, make it better, because, you know, if they, it's not, I don't think it's going to pass at its current form. But they're asking us whether we will accommodate some of the amendments, you know. But I don't think just accommodating all the amendments is not enough. And I think they should just go back and give us a supplementary report, and then maybe we'll go from there. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
just
there's
before
another
we-
thing. I had a conversation with Denis Lanou, who's with Heathwood Community Association. And Denis said to me, on one street alone in his area, they have 3 rooming houses. And he said, it's too much. And so we talk about, you know, limiting so many, but that's all we're doing is talking. There's nothing in the legislation about that. And if Denis is going to say, no, I don't want rooming houses, which, by the way, he does say, in case you're interested, no rooming houses. He's absolutely against them. And it's because there's no control at all. And he's
Yeah.
worried about the control.
And
So-
also, by legalizing it, I don't know whether it's going to solve the root problem also, because, you know, that will be underground rooming houses operator, you know, because, you know, if it's getting too expensive to get it legalized, I think there will be underground you know, operators, which we don't want either. So
Yeah.
so
Just
and
before
can
we
we
move-
Can
Yeah,
we go
sorry,
to and some other people, maybe? Jim?
If anybody else had a comment on rooming houses before we move on to the next item, which was transportation issues, but if anybody else had a Allura or Christina, if anybody, Courtney, if you had anything, comments on rooming houses just before we move on?
I mean, I think the problem right now is that, well, there's a twofold problem. One, this is the city's desperate attempt to create housing, which we are currently in a housing crisis. We
Mhm.
have a housing crisis. So my concerns with deferring things is that there are people who are in unsafe conditions right now, who will not have options for years.
No, it's not going to be for years, okay, Allura?
Well, it is
This is going to be a very, very short deferral.
Okay, but the thing is even with this rollout as they were proposing it, it was going to take time to create safe homes for people because they were going to try and keep people in these homes and retrofit them. I do have concerns about the numbers. I think that certain homes can accommodate 6 rooms if they're huge, but many can't, especially in, like, we have semi-detached homes here. I think there definitely has to be some consideration for how many people are living in these
Yes.
homes. I also see across the city a massive monetization of housing. It is not just rooming houses, but in general, the city has become a market for business people to come in, buy up properties, and rent them out. And you know, these rooming houses are just a symptom of that. I do think the city has to pay careful attention to how this is rolled out. I think it needs to be. I think we need to legislate. It's unsafe. It is a human right. How can we tell people that, I'm sorry, you have nowhere to live? That's not okay. So I do think we need to protect people. We do need to create some sort of a framework. There are issues with this, but it cannot be deferred for long. It is absolutely essential that people have safe places to live. But the city has to be careful about how this is done because the real problem here is there's no housing. We don't have proper housing, and this is a band-aid solution to a big systemic problem that we have. And it's not, unless you anticipate large swaths of homes being converted, which I think is everyone's, in these suburbs, that's the fear, is that we lose the sense of community. But it is, that's what's going to happen if we don't have proper housing in place for people in short order. And this has to be, like, the timelines for all of this have to be moved up because there simply is not enough safe space for people to live right now, and people can't afford what is there. So, I understand that they're doing this almost as an emergency measure, but we need to see much more action from the city on getting people homes now and maintaining the housing that's there. There is some affordable housing that's out there that is not being maintained. We're at risk of losing it. It's not being, upheld as far as the conditions go. Like, it's shameful what's happening in this city. So, I do support some sort of legislation, some sort of legalization for this. And I would really ask that you do what you can as soon as you can to make this better and safer for our communities.
Yep.
And quite frankly, the problem is like my children won't be able to afford a home, not unless I help them. So we're pushing out of our communities right now. Our communities have become so unaffordable that our own children cannot afford to live here. So people think of rooming houses, they think of destitute people who can't afford anything. And that's true for some of the time. But we're talking about students and, people who come from, for fairly well-to-do families who themselves will not be able to afford to live in their own communities.
So we're going to, Allura, appreciate those comments, and Stephen, appreciate those comments, and the councilors received a number of comments from residents in the ward. It's, as the councilor said, it's an issue that's been around for a long time, and as the councilor also said, she was prepared to look at some options here, and you talked about that in terms of numbers and other things. But just in the interest of time, because we've got 3 other items on here, and I know we've got some staff, so Unless there's any final comment that either Christina or Courtney wanted to make, we're going to move on to transportation.
No, I'm presently living beside a rooming house and I can tell you it's not fun. So I'm against it. So
That's Christina, you're saying that, eh? Okay.
yes, I have.
Good, good. Well,
It's been 5 years now. At one point, this is a semi-detached. At one point, a 3-bedroom small house. At one point, there was 14 people living in that house. 14. And the upkeep of the house, there is no upkeep. I've called the city, nothing. So I'm totally against it.
Well,
That's
we've
it.
been hearing that from many of your neighbors in the councilor's been hearing that too. So appreciate that. It's a tough issue.
I also just say that part of the enforcement issue is that we are expected to call and complain about every single thing all the time. And if we don't complain, nothing gets done. And even if we do complain,
nothing
nothing
gets
gets
done.
done.
You're
So
right.
there's a real situation here that, you know, people might be more open to these ideas if the city was, you know,
Yeah.
pulling their weight, the
I think that
enforcement officers.
that's a really important point, because a lot of people say if you legalize them, that might be good to have rules, but they're not doing a good job currently, so they don't have a lot of confidence. I mean, a lot of residents have said that. But anyway, we're going to move on to transportation. I want to welcome Sidra Ramzada. I hope I pronounced that name correctly, Sidra, from the city's transportation department, who's going to provide an overview of some of our traffic safety measures in the ward. Brief oral overview, and we'll open up for discussion. But first, I want to pass it to Councillor Lai to do some introductory comments, and then Sidra will make some comments on transportation issues.
Well, thank you again, Jim. And I know transportation issues are key to our residents. And, you know, you might have heard that work in the tunneling of Scarborough Subway Extension had just started. And for the first time, we have a subway stop in our ward at Shepherd and McCowan. And I will continue to advocate for the Shepherd Subway extension from Don Mills Road to hopefully McCowan at the least with the province. And I think it's looking good that we might get that. I mean, as with the Steeles Avenue widening, I mean, in the most northeast section of our ward, I have always said that after being a member of NATO, it's been 17 years. Can you believe that? And I've mentioned to some of the people that are complaining to me, I said, you know, they've been a member of NATO, standing for, you know, meaning is no action, talk only. That's my definition of NATO. So we don't want that to happen. So I've managed now to escalate the issue to the city manager, and the city is updating the environmental assessment and finalizing the design as we speak, and is committed to request for capital funding in the 2022 budget. In terms of in our neighborhoods, thanks to staff for working diligently with the traffic calming measures in our ward. Give you an example was the traffic calming, the installation of speed humps on Pitfield Road between Brimley and McCowan. You have no idea. I think recently there's an accident on Pitfield just a few days ago, and you have no idea how people speed their way. So the residents there, they're all for we're installing speed humps there. And another petition is underway to extend that onto Invergordon, which is past McCowan, the same, you know, the same on the Pitfield. And then when you pass McCowan, it's called Invergordon. And because it's the street below Shepherd, so a lot of people tend to use that as an alternate route. The city is also reducing speed limits in local roads, for those of you who don't know, from 40 kilometers to 30 kilometers per hour as part of Division 0 to promote safety. So there are, of course, other issues like parking that we have to deal with. And now I think I will turn the floor over to Sidra from the city's transportation department to provide some updating comments. Take it away, Sidra.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Sidra Rahimzada. I'm project manager with the City of Toronto's Transportation Traffic Operations Division. We're actually quite a large division. We have many units encompassing within our our division from Vision Zero to cycling, traffic management, signals, you name it, we've got a lot of subject matter experts. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of perspective on what we do in traffic operations. And our main goal is to focus on a lot of community-based initiatives, such as the council mentioned, traffic calming, new signal installation, pedestrian crossing lines, and so forth. And so if you have any specific questions around, like specific neighborhoods or locations, we encourage you to provide those to both us and the counselor so that we can have our staff go out and do, site visits and do field investigations. So definitely feel free to reach out. One of the things that the counselors mentioned was that the city in the last 4 years has really been going, has been trying to take on a lot more proactive approach in addressing transportation issues. And that is solely done through our Vision Zero road safety plan. About, I think 3 years ago, I think in July of 2019, we introduced the Vision Zero 2.0 report. And what was kind of key in that report was this speed management strategy. And within that strategy, what came out of it was a new approach that we're sort of implementing in Ward 23, which is our area-based speed limit reduction. This is something that's already been implemented, and you can check it out, I know, in a few communities in Mississauga, where what we're doing is the whole approach is to identify at entry and exit points to designated areas speed limit signage that says you're entering this specific community, this area, and the speed limit is as such. What this does is it actually helps us expedite the installation of speed limit reductions, because prior to this, in Toronto East York District, when there was a blanket reduction, there was a huge backlog of about, it took about 5 years to get all the speed limits reduced, because we had to introduce speed limits by street, and then have hundreds of thousands of signage installed per street. So the difference here is that we'll be introducing community-based, and we can definitely install these a lot faster. If you wanted more information about the report, you can head over to the Scarborough Community Council on the city's website page and look up the Vision Zero speed reduction report specific to Ward 23. It also speaks to Ward 21 because those two are identified as the wards that we're going to be prioritizing first for installation. And it is a multi-year initiative because, as you know, we have staffing resources, and again, these area-based streets will require reports so that we can change the speed limit from 50 to 30 in one go. So if you wanted more information about that, that's outlined in the report, as well as if you wanted actual visuals, there is a map there that shows you the areas defined. So that's a good visual for individuals. Some other initiatives as part of the Vision Zero that we're sort of excited to be piloting are some things that are specific to community zones and school-based zones. So, for example, one of the things we're doing is, and you'll see a lot being rolled out, is the camera enforcement. That is something that we're rolling out. Again, it's a database driven, so we have statistics and information obtained by Toronto Police Services that tell us where collisions are occurring. So we're definitely targeting these areas and having camera enforcement so that if you are going 10 over the speed limit, you will be ticketed. And that is something that the city is actively now engaging and implementing. It was a pilot, and now we're definitely looking forward to implementing more of those. Another thing that we're definitely looking forward to implementing are actual civil improvements, so engineering improvements. Some are done in conjunction with new road reconstruction. So if you ever see any roads that are being scheduled for reconstruction, what we're actually doing is looking at tightening curb radii, so making corners a lot tighter so that when pedestrians are standing at the corners, cars aren't making sweeping movements and making it just feel unsafe. We're trying to create a greater distance between vehicles on the roadway and a pedestrian waiting at the sidewalk. what that also does is that it also reduces the crossing distance. So because there will be more curb space, more waiting space for a pedestrian on the sidewalk, that the exposure on the roadway gets reduced. So those are things that typically we would just, prior to our Vision Zero approach, we would have just, whatever was there, we would just reinstate what was there. But now we're really looking at how we can make civil improvements so that in the long term, we can actively reduce a lot of incidents that may occur, such as that conflict point between pedestrians and any other cyclists, whether it be cyclists or motorists. And one of the things that we're actually looking at also doing is looking at other traffic calming improvements. So how can we actively, instead of doing work piecemeal, how can we actively, as roads are being reconstructed, as roads are being reassessed, how can we look at what other traffic calming measures mid-block, such as raised intersections at stop controls, how can that be implemented simultaneously? So this is something that, again, prior to us really not really looking at what physical things we could do, we're really now saying we need to be on top of this. We need to be more proactive as opposed to reactive.
So Sidra,
then-
can I just wrap
Sure,
up here?
okay.
Just maybe we'll take some questions just on traffic calming and the Vision Zero that some of the community associated. Was there something? Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you off right away, but was there one?
Yeah, I
final
was
thing
just
to
going to say we have I was just going to say that we have an entire division unit that is our Vision Zero unit. So if there's any specific questions, I'll definitely take it back to my colleagues, and then I'll share that information with the council's office to relay. But definitely, if there's questions about traffic calming, I can certainly help with that. I know Pitfield was recently approved in May. So the next stages of that, just as next steps, would be that the city clerk's office will send out a ballot to the residents, affected residents, with a map of where the proposed locations are. Once, I believe it's 2 weeks or a month that there's a turnaround, I'm not sure, but that once the ballots are received back by our clerk's office, then they'll give direction to us, city staff, to go ahead and install if there is favorable support. And then usually the speed humps get installed within a year. So stay tuned for that.
Perfect.
So
Thank
did you say
Sidra.
is it 1 year, Sidra? So it's 1 year from
Yeah,
the city clerk notification to you?
Yeah, we're finding that we're now that our Vision Zero has actually taken on the traffic calming portfolio, we've got typically it would take at least a year or two for speed humps to get installed, but now we're noticing that it's been expedited. So if it gets improved this year, we'll most likely get it installed at the end of this year, or if not early next year. So that's a bit more exciting as opposed to having to wait, a year or two after. So the clerks, if the residents haven't already received, they should be receiving ballots anytime soon.
Perfect.
Sidra, just a question for you. Is there a way to advance, like, to move it faster? Because, I'm having nightmare about what's happening, right? So it is a very dangerous situation on Pitfield. I know that because, we just over the weekend, there's an accident, this huge accident with all the traffic light and, all being smashed down. So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, is there a way that I think we can actually speed this up a little bit?
Well, the speed humps do get installed based on a ranking system. The ranking system does look at geometric conditions, the grade, the collision history. So that's already prioritized, but we can certainly look at all the locations slated for your ward and then reassess at that point.
Is there any questions from some of the residents associations about traffic calming? So the speed humps would go in on Pitfield. It's between Brimley and McCowan. Sidra talked about traffic calming. The local streets will be down to 30 kilometers from 40. I know, Allura, you had an issue about bicycles on sidewalks, but I don't know if any other of the residents associations had any questions specific to traffic calming. Just open the floor.
I'm concerned about these electric vehicles on sidewalks. Is anything being discussed about that?
I know we had our internal meeting with Toronto Police Services last month, and they had advised that they were looking at the legislation that was passed and how they were going to go about enforcing that. So I'll just touch base with our Toronto Police Services and circle back with what their findings were and how they intend on regulating and enforcing. That's certainly something I can look into.
Thank you. I think Sheila White had a question on bike lanes. Sheila, did you have a question on bike lanes?
I was just asking whether the city would ever consider licensing of bicycles to keep them off the sidewalk. It's essentially the same concern as Stephen, that cyclists are actually vehicles under the Highway Traffic Act, and we'd really like it if they obeyed all signs and signals. I'm just worried too with the e-bikes. They're so quiet, and one false move by a pedestrian with an e-bike coming up behind you could result in an injury or accident. So yeah, I was just curious whether bike licensing would ever be on the agenda or had it been looked at in the past.
Is that something you can answer, Sidra?
Yeah, so bicyclists, so the type of bicycle, the Highway Traffic Act actually regulates what type of bicycle can go on the sidewalk. And that is actually prescribed by the diameter of the wheel. So obviously small children with the smaller wheels are permitted to be on a sidewalk. It's the larger, generally, you'll see the adults or the teenagers. I can't off the top of my head remember the diameter of the wheel, but yes, cyclists are prohibited from cycling on the sidewalk. It just comes down to enforcement. Police have to enforce, cyclists to stay off the sidewalk. They are.
I would also argue that as part of the Vision Zero or as part of these redevelopment of roadways, and that is that we really do need proper cycling lanes for people. It's very dangerous to cycle on Scarborough roads. I'm scared to do it. I won't do it because I'm afraid of being hit by a vehicle because I don't think it's safe. And I would like to. Also, the connectivity throughout Scarborough, your bike lanes that do exist or bike trails that do exist are chopped and cut off. And so you have to then use sidewalks or roads to sort of get to the next one. And I think by looking at that as part of the traffic planning for our area, it's especially given there's new stations going up for the GO train, and you're trying to avoid like congestion in those areas, it is prudent to look at how we can have more cyclists moving across and through our communities safer. I know especially there's a lot of people that use it even just to get their groceries. It's an equity thing, so I'm not sure if I really support licensing because this is a mode of transportation that people who sometimes it's for because they can't afford another option. So and especially with COVID, it can be safer. So I'm hoping that Sidra, maybe you can answer this question, but are you factoring in like potential cycling lane options when you're looking at these intersections that you're redeveloping or that you're putting in? Like, is that part of the matrix, or is that not? Is that something that has to be requested separately?
Mm-hmm. No, that is actually absolutely investigated actively. We do have a cycling and pedestrian unit that has a strategic plan on how they envision the city to function, and they're really looking at connectivity, growth, and renewing existing routes that maybe weren't as equitable as previously. So one of the emphasis areas within our Vision Zero plan is, so we have 6 emphasis areas. One of them is cycling, and when we do any sort of civil work, it's literally everybody gets sat at the table and we discuss what needs to be done. So transit, even our partners with CTC, we all come to the table and say, what is our envision and what we want to move forward. So I encourage you, if you haven't already done so, look at our 10-year cycling network plan. They're actively implementing different types of cycle facilities, whether it's share road or separated or bidirectional. There's different types of treatments, but there is short-term programming and long-term planning, and that is all outlined in our cycling network plan. And you can find that on the city's website.
Thank you, Sidra.
Jim, can I actually add something?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that my office has been looking into putting some signage or if possible, to put up on some of the sidewalks that are quite dangerous, to say there's no cycling on sidewalks. Just in the meantime, which we wanted to kind of prevent people from thinking that it's safe to cycle on to bike on the sidewalk. So we are looking into that possibility, and thanks to Vivian, she's on top of it, and we will make sure that in the transitional period, we want to make sure that our residents are safe.
Great, thank you, Councillor. The other thing I should mention is that our office, Councillor Lai's office, also has a number of the slowdown signs that you can order, and they're in multiple languages, not just English. And calling the community office, if you've seen these signs around, a lot of them around school sites, but the people put them on their lawns in terms of traffic speeds within the neighborhood. And we have those signs available at the community office. You just have to contact us to do that. Just before we move on to
And
developments.
it's in Chinese too. It's in Chinese and Tagalog. We have some
Tagalog,
Chinese
yeah.
sign. Okay, so Allura, I mean, for the neighborhood that have Chinese, because I've mentioned they don't understand. If it slow down doesn't mean anything to some of the people that don't speak English, don't read English. So I've ordered some Chinese sign as well. So they're in my office. If you wanted some, just contact my office. Thank you.
Perfect. So was there any final comments? I don't know if Christina or Courtney or any person on the phone had any questions just on transportation before we move on to developments in Ward.
I've just noticed there's an uptick on speeding, like racing. I'm sure everyone around me can hear it from your neighborhoods, but I hope that's getting looked into as well. I hear cars racing at all hours of the night. And I think it's gotten worse over the COVID period.
Well, Allura, we've been reporting them. My office has been reporting them, and the police is looking into that.
This is Christine speaking. This is what I was going to bring up as well. I live off of Middlefield, and it's crazy how fast some of the cars go through there. You hear them at nighttime drag racing. We've actually police, but because by the time the police are sent out, they've already left. And I can tell you that since the 20 years that I've lived in this community, we've already had 3 to 4 deaths caused by racing down Middlefield Road. So I'd like something to be done on that road because it's a straightaway. You know what I mean? Like straightaway. So I agree with Allura when it comes to the speeding and the drag racing.
Yeah, good point, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for that. And thank you, Sidra, for taking your time this evening to be with us. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to developments in the ward. And we're pleased to have Christian Van Tresco with us, who's the manager for our ward. And I'm just going to pass it over to the council to make some introductory comments before Christian speaks, and then we'll do Q's and A's.
Well, thank you, Jim. And so far, so good. We're having a good discussion here. And in the last several months, have been very busy with public consultation meetings on developments in my ward, in Ward 23. And due to the pandemic, we can only host these public meetings virtually, and I hosted 4 of them. One on the storage facility on Nielsen in the Melbourne area, which is in the most easterly part of our ward. One on the residential proposal on Middlefield at Ingleton, which is south of Steeles. Another one on the condominium project at the southwest corner of Brimley and Shepherd. And the final one is the redevelopment proposal at Woodside Square. During these consultations, I listened to the presentation of city staff as well as the applicants, and of course to the questions and concerns of the surrounding residents. I believe it's imperative to engage the community to ensure local residents' voices are heard. Due to the recent change in the provincial growth plan, property owners have the right to make intensification applications. As your councillor, I have a role to play to manage the partnership between the owner, the city's community planning staff, and the community to address critical issues such as density, infrastructure, traffic, parking, and community benefits, etc. to achieve a balanced outcome. That being said, I'll turn the floor over to our most capable manager of community planning, Scarborough District, Christian Ventressa. Take it away, Christian.
Thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everybody. I am a planning manager in our community planning section. And I really just wanted to begin my ultimately very brief comments by echoing the councillor's push and championing of community engagement. You know, we are certainly in a time of growth and seemingly perpetual growth in the city. Through my career, it's only been one of growth and economic development and redevelopment of lands, and that is now coming to all corners of the city. Instead of being concentrated in certain pockets, we are seeing in Scarborough the type of development and the type of densities that in earlier days were maybe more centered around Young Eglinton, downtown, North York, Shepherd, and Scarborough Centre. So the two things that I do want to raise tonight, the files that Councillor Lai raised are still ongoing. One of the ways you can keep track of it, and I'm just going to put a link in the chat right now, is our application development center, application information center. And if you wanted to kind of click on that and put it in your bookmarks, that allows you to search by address. Even you can type in your own address and a 500-meter circle will come up to see what's available information-wise about all development applications. So most of the time when you and I would meet at a community meeting or otherwise, it would be on a larger file, a rezoning file or site plan file for different scales of development. But this application information center also helps track committee of adjustment files, which as Residents Association representatives, you're probably more dealing with on a day-to-day basis. In this particular ward, I could probably go through pretty quickly the larger scale developments that are adjacent to or abutting your communities, but you never know when somebody's going to want to put an addition on their house or a shed or change the garage around. It might trigger some committee of adjustment applications. So this link is very handy for you to stay in touch. It has staff information, all the drawings and materials that are supported in support of the application, and it's also a really handy tool to get a map and have it constantly updated. So the councillor mentioned meetings that have happened recently, and there's always time for feedback. Woodside Square being one of the larger initiatives underway in the district, which is the retention of the mall and development along its periphery. There's also mid-rise buildings along Shepherd Avenue at 4415 Shepherd and Brimley. I do recognize a few faces tonight from that meeting. Some of the upcoming meetings that you might be seeing in your community association areas at 3315 Midland, which is at Midland and South Shields. We have recently been submitted an application to the city for a townhouse development and the retention of a historic farmhouse. So there is an older building that currently houses a daycare, which is proposed to be demolished, and a townhouse, stacked townhouse product to replace it, encircling the existing farmhouse, which will be retained and likely done as an office or some sort of an event space. We're not quite sure yet. The applicant is unclear. So that is a pending community meeting this fall. There'll be a preliminary report prepared for community council coming up probably in September. Another upcoming community meeting that is coming is at 125 Montezuma. It is a second phase of development. The first phase of development was approved by council, I want to say in 2019. This would propose to redevelop with a similar built form and pattern the remainder of the lot, the remainder of the plaza. And on those two files, we're of course balancing built form and land use, housing options, and neighborhoods, as they are both neighborhoods designated sites. So they're, you know, lower scale, but as one of the previous speakers alluded to, you know, we are seeking, particularly on main streets, opportunities for potential modest scales of intensification. The other development interests in the ward are largely centered in the employment areas and the employment districts, but we, of course, are being mindful of the potential impacts of those intensified employment lands against nearby community associations and community and neighborhood boundaries. So that's when we look at some of the new recently adopted policies in the official plan about compatibility and mitigation of new employment uses, making sure they're not too noisy, the hours of operations are appropriate, and they're not creating too much traffic, and the traffic is centered in the employment areas. So with transit investment in the ward, obviously comes development interests. We could be seeing a few more development proposals or concepts coming through. But if there's any questions about any of the recent community engagement or files that you're just looking for updates on, I will do my best to answer them tonight. If not, I'll take them back and through the councillor's office provide a response. So those are my comments for now. If you want to open the floor for questions, Councillor and Jen.
So thank you, Christian. I appreciate you being with us tonight and provide that overview. I know it's kind of an overview at 30,000 feet, but open the floor for people, either general comments or specific to specific sites. As Christian said, there are a couple of people on this call tonight that have attended various public meetings, whether related to some of the, so I'll stop there. Jump in first.
Yeah, one question. Well, actually two questions, but number one, the council, the Scarborough Community Council and the Committee of Adjustment, they are supposed to post the upcoming agenda, I believe 14 days before. Is that correct or incorrect?
In a virtual world, they are aiming for 14, but the statutory, I believe 10 days is the statutory requirement. Any draft zoning or official plan amendments need to be available for 20 days, and notices are sent out 20 days in advance of a meeting. So the notices are going out 20 days as per Planning Act requirements, but the agenda is because of the virtual nature of things, and the links and everything that need to happen are potentially only going out 10 days in advance.
The notices that go out are going out to people who live within throwing a baseball. Is that correct?
Of the statutory meetings, the Planning Act requires 120 meters, which is pretty good. You'd be, the Jays could do it. I don't know if I could do it anymore. I used to pitch, so I could get it 60 feet to the plate. But the key thing, and I would encourage all your residents, is to attend the community consultation meetings, because through community council, for the rezoning applications at least, Councillor Lai casts a fairly wide net on expanded distribution. So she usually goes to 300 meters unless it's a bigger file, and then we've gone almost a kilometer for Woodside in some respects. So when you go to a community meeting and register, then you get put on the interested parties list, and then you're guaranteed a notice whether you can hit the site with a baseball or not. So that would be something that I would be encouraging our members to do, is when the preliminary meeting, like the meeting that I host or city staff hosts, when they go out, attend, register, and then they're put on a notification list, and they would be notified regardless of their proximity to a site.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Other questions?
Just want to say those properties are in Rosewood, so I hope I get notified. I think I usually get a letter, but yeah.
Yeah, Allura, I think I want to ask a question on your behalf to Christian, because on the Montezuma Trail redevelopment, remember we were at the public meeting, and I was saying that a lot of people were against it, and I was saying that I will only support that if you're going to be keeping the second part of the plaza. And now they are actually making an application to develop that. So I kind of said to them, I don't think I'm going to be supporting that, because I've made my promise to make sure that the plaza is going to be existing. So I don't know how we could actually explain to the resident about this going. So maybe Christian, if you can help us, will be good.
Sure. So first, Allura, you should be receiving all notifications as representative of a registered residents association, and if not, you can always get in touch with the staff on file. Click through the link, the name comes up when you hit the dots in your community, and you can send an email and automatically be registered. And on Montezuma, Councillor, we have certainly brought that to the applicant's attention, both pre-application and since the application was submitted. And I can honestly say that we are, as well as other developments that are not necessarily in your ward, but proposing similar ideas. These are local neighborhood amenities, right? These plazas are places for not only people to realize local trips, right? You're not necessarily going to go and fill a trunk, but if you're jumping off a bus or you're on your bike and you need a quick stop at a local convenience store, right? These are local amenities for residents, and we want people to be able to work and shop in their neighborhood. They're also places for businesses to grow. So you could work in your neighborhood if you were to take some on. So we have been, in our initial comments back to the proponent on Montezuma and on other files in Scarborough and some in Councillor Mantis's ward in particular, holding a pretty firm line about wanting to see not necessarily the strip plaza type use preserved, but ensuring that there are non-residential commercial opportunities within a potential redevelopment site. So particularly, you know, the Montezuma file, we had a meeting earlier this week and basically said it's going nowhere until we see some improvement, or else we can stick with the zoning as is, knowing what the council had previously, you know, and what we had written in a report to Community Council about recommending approval of the first phase, right, about the retention of local neighborhood retail amenity.
Exactly.
So I mean, I, for one, having worked at home through the pandemic, have never been to the corner store near our place. And I don't think I've bought so many blow pops and freezies in my life, trying to keep my kids sort of entertained late in the day. But these are things that I think are returning post-COVID. I think people are realizing that they enjoy these amenities and, you know, things that you don't necessarily need a lot of. So this is something that we're looking at actively with the applicant. The plans will evolve. We would prefer to hear what the community has to say before, you know, forcing a resubmission, right? We want to make sure that there's a level set of expectations, but we do anticipate revisions to come forward that would incorporate non-residential space, while potentially, and open space as well, places for people to congregate, gather, and enjoy the popsicle or whatever. So these are the types of things that we're working on these modest applications with, and hopefully seeing them advance.
Yeah, just wanted to say on the record that, you know, they've come to see me and Allura. I mean, for the record, I told them that I wouldn't support that because, you know, I gotta, you know, stand by my promise for the residents that this is not going to, you know, I think.
And the pharmacy are popular locations in our neighborhood. They're well attended.
Yeah.
As is Regino's and the other Alex Pure Wellness, but those are in the north or side of the plaza, so I don't know if they're staying or going or what's happening with those. But no, thank you. And I was waiting to get more information, so that actually is helpful to have that tonight because I did bring it to the community's attention, but I didn't have a lot of details. So I'm just waiting to see where this goes to get some more feedback.
Good.
Thank you, Laura. Is there any other questions of Christian from Christina or Courtney or anybody else?
I did have one. Yes, I did have one. The status of the Shepherd Avenue study and public participation for that. Is there a timetable?
The Shepherd Avenue study related to the Agincourt Mall application?
Well, I'm thinking of the stretch that runs through Brimley from Glen Watford east to McCowan. That stretch where 4415 is in that area, and it's kind of being approved ahead of the Shepherd Avenue study, or it's being considered ahead of the finalization of that study. So I was wondering when the final study will be available for the public to look at.
It frankly hasn't been fully initiated yet. We can't really, with the ebb and flow of transit technologies, it's really hard for us to settle on an appropriate scope of a study. I like to say on Shepherd, I'm a higher order fanatic, but I'm technology agnostic. I'll take whatever happens. Just tell me what type of technology it's going to be, if it's going to be on the surface or below grade, and then we can properly scope a planning study. There are policies in the official plan that do allow for some development to happen before the completion of it, and there are certain criteria that need to be met. So 4415 will need to ensure that they are developing the site at an appropriate density and scale to not essentially negatively precedent or negatively prejudice further development decisions along the line. So You know, when we see something that is a mid-rise form, I think we'd be having a very different conversation with the community and the applicants if they had proposed a tower than a mid-rise development, which is generally, you know, we're going to massage the built form to improve its relationship with the corner. We're trying to create a bit of an open space there and some non-residential uses to have a bit of a plaza, a little bit of a thing at Shepherd and Brimley for people to come to, and then if there's a transit stop, even better. But it's a matter of resources and prioritization right now. But really, we can't get moving on it until we know what the transit technology is going to be. Because if it's a subway and we only propose mid-rise, we're under intensifying. If it's a LRT and we're proposing towers, we're over intensifying. So there's a kind of a chicken and egg dance that needs to happen here.
Just to clarify on the 4415, that's on the high end of mid-rise by definition as they currently exist, right? Mid-rise would generally be about 6 stories. And we're at that location, we're looking at 11, sort of step down to 6 stories at the south end. So I'm
mid-rise,
I'm concerned about a
Go ahead.
precedent being set in advance of a Shepherd Avenue study being kickstarted. Like how many applications might come forward before there's an actual study done, and how many precedents will be drawn from that 11 stories is now we're talking about 11 stories being the average, and we're using words like tower, which I don't think ever fit at that Brimley Shepherd intersection, but we do have 3 other corners there. Eventually they will be redeveloped. So I'm curious about, that's why I'm asking about the timing and the phasing of the study, because we need something to measure these buildings against.
So again, I think it's just that mid-rise is sort of anything that is between 5 stories and above, up to the maximum of 11, just because it's geared to the street that's in front of it. So a street like Shepherd, which is 36 meters wide, probably maximum mid-rise is 11 stories, and anything between 8 and 11 probably fits that width of street without having to worry about shadow impacts on the northern sidewalk. A street like, I'm trying to think of 27-meter right-of-ways. Middlefield, for example, is only a 27-meter right-of-way, so we would not expect anything that large on Middlefield. I know that's in a different part of the ward. If anything, and then the land use designations on Middlefield wouldn't really want anything more than 4 or 5 stories, and it's sort of contextual. We do have a list of studies that we do need to get ongoing with. One of them is tied to Agincourt on both sides of Midland, really. So really Brimley over to almost all the way to Birchmount. But again, we're sort of struggling with the fluidity of the transit question for now. And I know that we may have some clarity on that. Well, there's elections coming up, I'm sure, and I'm sure that there will be a lot said about how to complete the network in Scarborough and what the technology is going to be. So we're aware. We don't see a ton of development interest right now, but if that were to suddenly pick up some steam in terms of pre-application conversations, it would certainly, increase the viability or the need to take a good look at that segment from a more detailed perspective than just on an application by application basis.
Thank you, Christian. Is there any just final comments before we move on to COVID? I know representatives from the Toronto Board of Health are with us. Does Christina or Courtney, or the person on the phone, have any final questions for Christian before we move on? Thank you, Christian.
Sorry, I do have one question, and it is about community centers. Like we've mentioned before, and I know this was something that Courtney wanted to touch base on too. We've mentioned before about all this development happening, and are we looking into locations or potential of an additional community center in the ward? I don't know if that's a question for Councillor Lai or.
I'll just
the council just reopened
quickly,
on Sunday.
I was just going to say, so
I know, but it's
great,
not going to be
great
enough.
news for new ribbons. Yeah, great news about new ribbons. I'll make a brief comment, and I think it's something I'll have to probably take back offline because it's generally outside of city planning's, like the Parks, Forestry, and Recreations Division does the facilities planning. We feed into that process, obviously, with our development pipeline and proposals. usually what we do is on larger sites, secure space within a development, if it's a big enough development, or secure contributions towards expansion of certain centers. So there is currently, even on the books, secured contributions towards the Milliken Community Center expansion and others towards. I think on one of the Glen Watford applications, Councillor, you secured contribution towards even further expansion and enhancements for the Agincourt Rec Center. So it happens incrementally. It happens with development and over time. I'm not sure, and this is what I'll have to take back offline, what new facilities. And when I say facilities, it's not just necessarily like a building with rec space. It's also tennis courts and soccer fields and that kind of thing. But Parks, Forestry, and Recreation has a pretty thorough master plan about its facilities, and it's broken down fairly in a fairly detailed way by the area of the city. It's not just kind of a big long shopping list. It actually says this park this and this park that and that center that. So maybe I'll have one of my colleagues in Parks get in touch with the councillor's office and provide some information. And Allura, I put the Montezuma report link in the chat. If you want to go down into the chat, that's the June report, which will have all the most up-to-date information.
Christian, may I ask just following up on that question that Allura has. I remember that the property, there's a contribution from the property that Lesso Mall owns and Middlefield and Steeles towards the expansion of the Milliken Park Community Center. So where does that stand now?
So we receive those contributions when an applicant pulls a building permit. So because they haven't pulled the trigger on a building permit, we don't receive the payment, but it's secured and it's being indexed. So with every day that passes, it's like an interest rate. It kind of, the tab kind of, but we can't
so
pull
my
their
job
hands
now,
to a shovel and get them to build, but maybe, with some gentle nudging. I know that they do have some activity in terms of they're trying to parcel the site, which is probably good news because they're trying to move some things along from a real estate perspective. So that's likely good news, but it's at above grade building permit that we receive those payments.
So thank you for that, because it's my job now to kind of push them to get the above grade building permit so that we can kick in the enhancement of the Milliken Park Center that they promised. I think it was an expansion or something like that. So well, just keep me posted. I thank you for that answer, because I wasn't aware of the situation. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the
Thank
time
you,
to be
everyone.
with us tonight. Our last item on the agenda is, of course, the issue that we've all been dealing with for, I guess, the last 18 months, which is COVID-19, and the city's been very active, and Councillor Lai has been very, very active. We're fortunate to welcome Dr. Vanita Dubey from the Board of Health, who'll be speaking shortly. But just before the doctor provides an overview, if I can ask the councillor to provide some opening comment.
Thank you, Jim. Again, moving right along, we have, as you know, the city has been very busy on COVID, both in the early stages with the setting up of testing centers, and most recently launching the vaccine clinics and campaign. My office has been collaborating with Essex Chan, Care First Seniors, and Community Services Association, and other community partners, including volunteers such as Allura. I want to mention her because she actually sits at the table on the vaccine table and very, very representing us, and also interpreter support. I mean, my office has been very, very actively engaged in those to ensure as many of our residents are vaccinated. Through a weekly e-newsletter update by email and social media such as WhatsApp and WeChat and Facebook, we've been keeping our residents up to date on COVID-19 and vaccine information regularly. So while there is much to be hopeful about the rate of vaccination, the opening up of the economy, and we're moving into step 3 on Friday, congratulations, and we must still guard against any future outbreak. So we are not there yet. We've seen the end of the tunnel. We are not out of the tunnel yet. So we still have to be very mindful of, trying to avoid another wave coming. So tonight we're very happy to have Dr. Dubé from the Toronto Public Health to provide us with a brief first-hand update. So over to you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, and thank you everyone for having me. Just, a few updates, really. I think we've all been living and breathing COVID, and I think we can all, from personal experience, say that it has been a very long pandemic. That graph, actually, if you don't mind just putting up that slide again, I just want to walk through that one graph. And what that graph shows is from the beginning of January until now, the bars are the COVID cases. And you can see the COVID cases have come down in time when the lines have increased, and that's the lines of vaccination. So I think this is actually really nicely depicts how vaccines really do work. We had a very bad third wave, and now we have high vaccination rates will help us against a fourth wave. But that fourth wave is like looming, and what's looming about it is the news of the Delta variant. And so that's why we need to get single dose coverage rates high, and we're sitting approaching 80%, but really with this Delta variant that is even more transmissible than what the variant that we had in the third wave, we need the highest coverage rates possible, and that's of 2 doses, really. I mean, the good news is the vaccines do protect even against this Delta variant. There's been a lot of questions about interchangeability of vaccines. There was some misinformation from the WHO that was kind of shared in the media out of context, very out of context. The statement, the interchangeability between Moderna and Pfizer, they are like twin sibling vaccines, very, very similar. It's mostly Moderna that we have available, and so getting that second dose as quickly as possible is important. But what's also really important is that we get our coverage rates as high as possible. And so I think I would urge everyone, if we can all find one person who's not vaccinated and get them vaccinated, we will be there. If you haven't seen our website, I have it up on my screen here, but it shows the rates by age. And you may be very surprised if you haven't seen this data. The 18 to 24-year-olds have 90% coverage rate for their first dose of vaccine. I mean, they are making all age groups look so bad. And when you talk to them about why they're so interested, they don't want to get COVID and they want to go back out and enjoy being a young adult. What's more concerning, I think, where we can all play a role is 80 plus is sitting at 75%. And so I think probably there are many either homebound seniors, maybe non-English speaking seniors, non-connected, can't book an appointment. 25% in our city, 80 plus, they're the highest risk. The Delta variant is still around. We have to protect them. So we need to all do more to reach them. The other age groups, I'm just looking at my screen, the 30 to 50-year-olds, these are adults who are more likely the parents of young children. Their coverage rates are between 70 to 75%. They're the lowest, that middle age bracket. And so is it because they're working, they can't get their vaccine? Are they worried that if they have symptoms, what can they do? There's actually provincial supports. If you have symptoms following your vaccination, you can actually take up to 3 days off sick time. So anyways, just to kind of flag some specific areas that we all in all communities need to target. The other thing that I'll note is on our website, you can actually look at the coverage rates by neighborhoods, and that may be quite helpful as well. So I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Dubé, I want to thank you for being with us tonight and thank Toronto Public Health for all the good work you're doing. And our office has been actively involved. Vivian in our office has been part of all the ambassador teams and other things that the city has set up and doing a great job on, and then the various clinics we've had, pop-up clinics in Ward 23. So anybody had any questions of
one simple question. If you've had 2 shots, what are the chances of you getting COVID?
Yeah, so I can actually tell you, based on our data, 99% of people who are getting COVID are unvaccinated. So it's the chances of you getting COVID are very low if you have had your 2 doses of vaccine.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I do have a comment, if I may, Jim.
Absolutely.
I
Counselor.
just, Dr. Dubé is actually the Associate Medical Officer of Health, right? You are the second in command at the Toronto Public Health. And I just wanted to express our debt of gratitude and thanks to the TPH staff for doing such a good job. And you always listen, and you've been very, very good. And with Dr. Davila briefing us with all this information, and you are at the back end helping out, with the helping out, and you're really doing a good job. Just wanted to commend your staff, and please give them a pat on the shoulder from us. And we needed that. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Go ahead.
Similarly, I'd like to thank your office, Councillor Lai, because I personally saw once you were able to get the information directly from our local health network and the city, how you really took that and ran with it, and in particular reached out to the Chinese community and provided information in their language so that people could get the vaccine, and it was a big deal in our community. So thank you very much for what your office has done. You were very involved, and I think it made a difference.
Well, thank you, Allura. I mean, the credit goes to my staff. I mean, they work day and night. You've seen that. They're answering questions, and I fill in when they're off. So, I mean, there's so many questions. They're asking simple questions, and Jason, who is here, he's providing daily updates in Chinese, daily. And people they missed their, today they said, where's the update today, right? Everybody's missing to read those updates. So I really want to commend my staff too. So they're terrific. They're just the dream team, I say to them, and to be recognized by you, Allura, I think they're very happy. They're very happy. Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to say that, I mean, thank you to all of you. I mean, you're all doing very important public health work. Like you can see, Toronto Public Health on its own can't do this. We are a big team, but not big enough for this city. So, and our work is not done yet. I think that's the other piece. Some people feel the pandemic's over now, and it's really not. We really do, like these last 20% of people that we need to get vaccinated may take a lot more effort. So please do keep up that good work to drive people to the vaccine clinics, and to let you know that vaccines will soon be more available in doctors' offices, and I think that that's going to help as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Was there any other comments that any of the participants had? Christina or Courtney or Sheila or person on the phone? Anybody have any other questions of?
Yeah, I was curious about the Pfizer availability, because you said that mostly it's Moderna that's being administered right now. Is that likely to change?
Yeah, good question. In June when I was giving my talks, I said it's Pfizer, right? And then it flipped. It really is dependent upon the supply, which is procured federally. And right now it's Moderna's turn to kind of fulfill the obligation. Pfizer will be returning, I understand. It's not that we don't have Pfizer, but the Pfizer that we have is limited, and that's being reserved for the 12 to 17-year-olds for the most part, because that's the only vaccine that's licensed for that age group. So actually, we don't actually know week to week and how much vaccine we're getting, and which vaccine, but it is between those two vaccines now. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Are there studies being done on whether Moderna will be available for the 12 to 18 group? And also, I was wondering about what's happening or what the plans are for the under 12s.
Yeah, so Moderna has actually completed their studies for the 12 to 17-year-olds and is awaiting licensure. So they've put in their application to Health Canada and the FDA as well. And then for the under 11, the studies are ongoing. And so once the studies are completed, those manufacturers, like some of our existing vaccines, will then have to put their applications forward. So hopefully in the coming months, I mean, who knows, it's COVID time, right? So it could be quicker or shorter depending upon what happens. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And I wanted to welcome Mariel, who's joined us, I see there. So thank you for joining us also this evening. If there's any final sort of comments or questions of Dr. Dubé, I just want to thank her on behalf of Councillor Lai and for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us and to provide an update to Residents Association Scarborough North. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. So,
go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I think our next one is other business. Yes, yes. Well, by the way, since Muriel joined us, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday, Muriel. So thank you for spending some of your birthday, some time with us. So I hope you had a good celebration. And you're on mute. You're on mute. Can you want to say a few words? Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I did it. I think.
Now, good for
Yeah,
you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
So how's your birthday so far?
For me?
How's your birthday so far?
Oh, it was very good. I finally had my grandchildren and that, it's been a couple of years almost that we haven't seen anybody. So it helps. And, I'm really looking forward to going to the community centers whenever it opens up. I think that'll be good for old people like me.
Yes. Well, speaking of community center, I'm going to tell you guys that the Aging Court Community Center, the mayor and I actually went there on Sunday to open it up officially. So on Friday, they will be reopening on Friday to the public because of step 3 is coming. But we still have not heard about the programs and all that. So just watch out from at our e-blast, our e-newsletter. We'll relay all the information about that in our upcoming newsletter on Friday.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so that is reopening. It was so excited. It was state of the art and it's so updated. It'll wow you. Okay, so go and take a look when you have a time over the weekend, just to maybe to visit the washrooms. They're new washrooms too,
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm so excited. Actually, I will probably be hosting maybe a community picnic there, maybe in the fall. Maybe so that everybody come for a hot dog or from a hamburger, so that everybody will have a good time celebrating the reopening. Yeah.
Happy to go for sure.
That's good. So let's go. Just move to our next community other businesses. I just have a couple of things to say, Jason. We are going to be planning for a community cleanup days. The 2 date will be August 14 and August 28. Okay, just wanted to let you know that I wanted the community associations to be involved. So if you are interested, please email Viviana from my office to express your interest, so that we will send you volunteers. So maybe the Rosewood Association do one, and the CD Ferguson's can do, and then even maybe the Schutzfield area. You can you guys we can always plan for a good community cleanup, because a lot of people are with the mask all over the place, and I think it's time for us to do some group activities together for community cleanup, especially in the summer when we are open, right? Step 3, we're step 3. So that is my one of my announcement. And the other one is about, for those of you who don't know, we are going to be painting 10 bell box murals in the North Agincourt area. So the artists will be starting next Monday to paint those mural boxes that we ordered. So if you
the counselors just, technology has impacted us, unfortunately. Are the others not able to see the counselor, hear the counselor?
No, I think she just went offline. She'll probably have to log in again.
Yeah, technology wise, but
Yeah.
she was talking about we're doing 10 bell boxes that'll be repainted this summer as part of a city program that we've access. We're using local artists also to do that in some of the schools and others. And I also want to speak a bit more about that, but it's an exciting initiative. So, are there any sort of final comments that people have just before? I know we're past 8 o'clock here, and I appreciate the time that you've all taken. Is there anything else? We had 4 items. We can always do a future meeting. We didn't talk about community safety tonight. There's other issues that people have raised. That we could have talked. Oh, the counselor's back. So
There she is.
Sorry, I'm having some challenges with some of my Wi-Fi. So I'm trying to use my cellular data. But anyways, my apologies, and we won't be long. I think we're just at the end. I was just saying that, I wanted to make my community very vibrant, so we can have some of those bell boxes painted, and will, make us, after COVID, will make us very happy and artistic and, full of energy and energizing, vibrant ward. And just some closing remarks. I really wanted to thank everybody for engaging tonight. This is only the beginning of many, many conversations to come. I think this is kind of handy for us. I think we should host this more often next time, going forward, because this is a good way at the comfort of our home. We can actually chat and get some information. I think this COVID has created so many new norms, and this is one of them. And hopefully everybody's getting vaccinated. But even if you have vaccinated and got your second dose, please continue to follow public health protocols, because because it's very important that we don't want to have a 4th wave. So stay safe and vigilant, and we look forward to more engagement until our next meeting. Thank you, and good evening.
Thank you.
Everyone, appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.